me thank all of you for taking the time and making the special effort to be here for this very special event, the 40th anniversary celebration of the Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership. My name is Bill Staples. I'm the president of the University of Houston Clear Lake, and it's my pleasure to serve as tonight's Master of Ceremonies. I'm honored to be a current board member of BAHEP and a past chair of the organization as well. A number of people in the audience have come from a long way, long distance to be here tonight, and we really thank you for making that special effort. Special thanks to our current and former elected officials that are with us this evening, as well as the current and former members of the board of the Clear Lake Area Economic Development Foundation and the Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership. A very special thank you, we can't thank you enough, to our sponsors. You'll see the names of the individuals and organizations displayed around the room. We had 4 different decade sponsors, as well as 40 organizations and individuals that sponsored individual years covering this 40-year celebration. Our program tonight will consist of reflections by 4 individuals who have played key roles in the 40-year history of what we know today as the Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership. And each of those individuals will cover a particular time period over those 40 years. It's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, who will cover the period that we refer to as the formative years, from 1976 to 1991. And that speaker will be Mr. Bob Scott. Now, Bob came to Clear Lake in 1964. And in 1965, he opened the Nassau Bay National Bank. Some of his bank's customers included the original astronauts. And one of his customers was Gus Grissom at the bank. Bob served on the board from 1976 to 1978, and then again from 1983 to 1992. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the podium Mr. Bob Scott.
I guess it's fitting the oldest speak first. The formative years, 1976, 1991. All of you who were alive in 1976, hold your hand up. Now, all of you who have vivid memories of events of that year, please keep your hands raised. Live. Well, it was a long time ago. In the mid-1970s, a committee of the Clear Lake Area Chamber submitted an idea to its board about creating an organization that would be focusing on promoting the area on a continuous basis. But how to organize, how to manage, how to fund the project. After a bunch of discussion, the most efficient avenue seemed to be to create an economic development foundation, hence CLADEF, the Clear Lake Area Economic Development Foundation, and it was founded in 1976. In the beginning years, operating dollars were as scarce as hen's teeth. Businesses and companies were hesitant to invest primarily because the foundation didn't have a track record. Due to the generosity of the Clear Lake Chamber, and bless them for this, the foundation continued to operate on their premises until 1985. Now, short supply of cash does not sufficiently describe the financial position that we had in 1976 and a few years after that. We struggled to fund debts. This is hard for a banker to say. There were as much as 60 days overdue. More than once, Friendswood Development Company and others came to our financial rescue. Then, thank the good Lord, in 1985, 2 significant events occurred which infused credibility and management into the effort. Office space became available at One Corporate Plaza, which was a brand new building on Bay Area Boulevard, and the astonishing, magnificent, wonderful news was that the space would be rent-free for a period of 3 years. Hallelujah. Thanks to the generosity of the building's developer, Fred Griffin. Also, it became evident that professional leadership was required for substantial progress to be achieved. Steve Sandstedt was employed to furnish day-to-day management. So with new quarters and an executive director to provide leadership, the foundation made favorable progress in establishing a reputation in the community for being essential to attract diversification into the base. This was critical as the oil industry, as some of you might remember who were that age, experienced a huge major setback in the 1980s, and some of us suffered because of that. Business leaders realized that the Clear Lake area was heavily dependent on the aerospace industry, and a broadening of the base was essential. The University of Houston Clear Lake had become active in the foundation, and they were extremely helpful in providing research necessary for presentations to prospective clients. As the dollars began flowing into the foundation began to reach out in several new areas, including, but not limited to, establishing a Clear Lake Area Aerospace Task Force to foster improved communication between NASA JSC and the contractors. It also became politically active, and this is so important, in organizing the community to work with Texas congressional delegation to battle and to fight for more NASA work to remain in our community. Larry Griffin and Roy Pizzo followed Steve Sandstedt as executive directors and continued providing excellent leadership through the foundation and formation years. The startup phase was a tough time. It was a stressful time, but also it was a time of vision, of optimism about the future. And it gave me an opportunity to work with those who embodied these wonderful necessary traits. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Our second speaker will cover the period of 1992 to 2001, and we refer to that period of time in the history of the organization as building the foundation. And that speaker will be Mr. Joe Barlow. Joe was one of the founders of the Clear Lake Area Economic Development Foundation. He is a seventh, let me repeat that, he is a seventh generation Texan. And this year marks his 50th year of practicing law, all 50 years in Clear Lake. Congratulations, Joe. Joe served on the board for over 25 years of the organization. Please join me in welcoming to the podium Mr. Joe Barlow.
They all had theirs typed out. I put mine on legal paper. Bob called me and told me that he wanted me to describe what I call the clay deaf years in 4 minutes. And that, okay. Did someone say they couldn't hear me? And I thought about that, and I figured there's really no way that I can describe in words what happened in 10 years in 4 minutes. So I'm going to sort of paint you a visual picture. Just imagine that you have the people that started the foundation and those that followed it. They're all sitting around a big table. each one has come to the table with a bag of chips. And everybody took their chips and they put them on the table. And they were different types. There was money, there was time, there was talent, there was determination, there was drive. And they took the chips and they emptied them all up and they put them in the middle of the table. And as each one joined the foundation, they were asked to do the same thing. Put all your chips on the table. Let's give back to the community. And what we found and what we had was a group of ladies and gentlemen with an attitude of gratitude. And they wanted to give back to the community. And as those left, others came and they put their chips on the table. And everyone kept the chips on the table. Nobody ever took any away. And as we were working around and doing our CLAF work and building this organization, everybody had a special, what I call, in my mind, a CLAF car. A CLAF car is kind of different than any other car. It only has one gear. And that's forward. And it only goes one way. And that's up. Another unusual thing about a CLAF car is it didn't have a rear view mirror because we were not allowed to look back. We always had a vision of drive and determination to look forward. As I reflected back on those times and those people and what they gave and how they gave it, it reminded me of my favorite poem. It's written by Linda Ellis. It's called The Dash. A man went to a funeral, and as he stood to speak, he referred to the dates on the lady's tombstone that he was speaking for from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of her birth, then spoke of the following dates of her death with tears. But he said what mattered most was the dash between the years. For that dash represents all the time that she spent alive on earth, and now only those who loved her know what that little line was worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the houses, the boats, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you'll never know how much time you have left to get it all rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and what's real, and always try to understand the way other people feel, and be less quick to anger, and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect, and more often wear a smile, and remembering that this special dash might last only a little while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say or how you spent your dash? I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, between 92 and 01, we spent our dash, and I think we had a job well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe, very much. Our third speaker will cover the period from 2002 to 2008, which we're referring to as regional leadership. And that speaker will be Sandy Johnson. Sandy, as many of you know, is the CEO of Barrios Technology. She served as chair of BAHEP in both 2000 and 2005. In 2015, she was recognized as Volunteer of the Year by the United Way of Greater Houston. And I'm especially proud that we count her as a distinguished alumna of the University of Houston Clear Lake, and one of only 3 individuals to receive the Presidential Medal in the 43-year history of UHCL. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podium, Sandy Johnson.
Good evening. The first major step in defining our role as a regional leader was really our name change. We went from being called CLADEF, the Clear Lake Area Economic Development Foundation, to BAHEP, the Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership. Most people who were involved felt there were 2 main reasons for the name change. The first being the obvious. People could finally figure out where we were. We weren't in Florida, as many people thought. We were right here close to Houston. The second reason was really to more accurately define our role, which was building partnerships. That's how we evolved. But what most people didn't know is there really was a third reason for the name change, because when was that lake ever clear? Our focus during this period was on 3 things. We focused on retention, expansion, and recruitment, and we were successful in all 3. I want to give you some examples of each. As far as retention, we engaged the entire Texas congressional delegation, some of who are in the room today, to ensure continued funding for JSC's human spaceflight programs. In 2005, the Citizens for Space Exploration, which was previously called Keep It Sold, then it was called National Keep It Sold. We changed names a lot. Took over 100 grassroots citizens to Washington, D.C. to spread the word and to promote human spaceflight. And they have done so every single year since. That's very impressive. As far as expansion, we had the TOP program, the Technology Outreach Program, which also changed its name to SATOP, the Space Alliance Technology Outreach Program, when it became first a statewide program and then a national program. And it helped small businesses grow, solve problems that were challenging them. But the most important thing that it did for BAHEP was it brought us Bob Mitchell. Because Bob was hired to lead that program and to manage its expansion into a statewide program. Bob had worked for Jim Reinhartson previously. He agreed to come do it again. I mean, how could you turn that down? But we were really proud to have both Jim and Bob. They both provided such outstanding leadership to our organization, really made expanding to be a regional leader possible. As far as recruitment during this time frame, our primary focus was on Ellington Field. And if any of you have driven by there recently, you can see the new buildings and you can see the traffic at 5 o'clock and see that we were successful. Over 2,000 troops moved there from the Medical Center of Houston to our area in Clear Lake. So in all 3 areas, retention, expansion, and recruitment, we were successful. As far as our industrial base, we had the ABCs. That's what we coined it in those years. Most people thought we used ABC because it made it easy for Jim to remember what they were. But it did truly define who we were. A stood for Aerospace and Aviation, with the examples I gave previously, promoting NASA funding, Ellington Field. B represented biotechnology and the life sciences. One of the major accomplishments there in this time frame was the establishment of a national biocontainment lab at UTMB in Galveston. C stood for chemicals and commodities. This decade saw significant growth in both expansion and new development as far as facilities focused on research and production in oil and gas operations, most of those located in Bayport. Many of those were international, which gave our regional focus a really big region. All of those industries, the A's, the B's, and the C's, are still going strong today, and that's due to a lot of you in this room for the work you have done over those many years contributing to BAHEP. Toward the end of our regional leadership era, in January of 2008, Bob Mitchell became BAHEP's president. Jim convinced Bob it was the perfect year for a transition. He had everything in great shape. It was going to be a really smooth year until something like Ike came along and made the biggest liar out of Jim possible. That was Bob's initiation into his role as president of BAHEP. But he rose to that challenge and he handled it well. He clearly established BAHEP as a leader both in the good times and in the bad times. He pulled together a mayor's press conference with all the mayors of the region to let both the businesses and the residences know what to expect and what resources were there for them. He worked directly with FEMA, which was quite a challenge, to ensure that they knew the economic impact to our region because they were still paying attention to that state next door. And he led his team to work with all those cities to apply for federal grants and make sure we took advantage of the opportunities that were available to us. Through this tragedy, I believe BAHEP grew as a true regional leader at the local, the state, and the national level. Yes, this region, this era, truly regional leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy, very much. Before I introduce our fourth and final speaker, I'll share with you a very quick story. In 2003, I had the pleasure of serving as the chairman of CLADEF. And in late 2003, Jim Reinhardtson called me at UHCF. And he said, Bill, I have good news and bad news. The good news is we have a chairman for 2004. The bad news, it's you. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't know how to take that. But what was interesting, and I guess the claim to fame now is, I was the chairman of CLADEF, and I was the chairman of BAHEP. Because right here at South Shore Harbor was when we made the announcement outside that we were changing the name of the organization to much more of a regional organization. Jim served as president of BAHEP from 1992 to 2008. And we would be totally remiss, at least in my opinion, if we did not recognize Jim and Lee Reinhardtson. Jim and Lee, please stand up. Our fourth and final speaker will cover the period from 2009 to the present, and we're referring to that as expanding influence. And that speaker will be our president, Bob Mitchell. As you just heard, Bob joined CLADEF in June 2001 to oversee the Space Alliance Technology Outreach Program, which we refer to as SATOP. In the fall of 2007, Bob was named president-elect of BAHEP. And over those 7 years, from the time he joined BAHEP until he was named president-elect, Bob worked side by side with Jim, a real team. Bob assumed the presidency of BAHEP on January 1st, 2008. Please join me in welcoming to the podium the president of the Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership, Bob Mitchell.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for being here today. Great turnout. Really appreciate you joining us in this. But, you know, my challenge today is going to be able to squeeze the past 8 years in 4 minutes. I don't think I can do that. It'll probably take about 5. So let me begin by noting 2 big changes in our region and 2 things that are much the same. The first set of changes is based on how much this region itself has transformed. Our profile for people, businesses has transformed. Key issues have changed dramatically. The second set of changes is how economic development has increasingly been sophisticated. Thanks to trends in social media, technology, global competitiveness, and even how economic development process actually works. So both what we look like and how we operate has changed, but some things endure. First and foremost, it's how many incredible people have contributed to BAHEP's success and the strength of this region. Many of you are in this room today. So please join me to applaud you for all the great work that you've done. A special thanks to Jim Reinhardtson. Thank you, Jim, for your impactful leadership for CLADEF and BAHEP for 15 years. Thank you so much. The second constant has been our values. We believe that our successes in economic development, in advocacy for our regional interests, and in leadership for assuring our future vibrancy can be traced directly to our values. We value integrity, accountability, and transparency in our operations. We value truthfulness, honor, and respect with all of our many constituencies. We are fortunate to serve 2 counties, 14 cities, and multiple industry clusters. Thousands of businesses, tens of thousands of people are impacted by our work. We are humbled, and you are the reason we do what we do. What do we do? One story will illustrate how we work. On October the 1st, 2013, the federal government shut down. Yes, the media reported the possibility, but few thought it would really happen. And clearly, no one could anticipate the costly, far-reaching consequences to our community. Prior to the shutdown, BAHEP staff and the executive committee polled congressional delegation to determine exactly what the shutdown might entail. We began checking with everyone: NASA, the military, our airports, our ports, our hospitals. Who knew every citizen who relied on things as basic as Social Security and transportation could be affected? The list was sobering and staggering. Within hours of the shutdown, BAHEP was able to bring to the table, from across this region, members and leaders to assess the impact and define our options. The answer, as it so often does, emerged from a collaboration and focused action. We created a white paper that made national news and had national impact. The document addressed the impact on large and small businesses and the people that support those businesses. We brought attention to the lives affected and to the unintended consequences of the shutdown. And we repeated this model many times, including hurricane response, storm surge protection, FEMA flood insurance, state and federal advocacy, and job creation. But we're not just in the business of job creation, but also in the business of protecting and enhancing the vital interests, and perhaps most importantly, we bring people, the right people together at the right times, in the right places, above the noise, to address the issues that matter to this community. And it all starts with values. Values create our goals. Goals guide our planning. Planning results in our actions. Reflecting on the past decade, the story of BAHEP is simply this: we listen carefully, anticipate actively, plan collaboratively, and act responsibly. Our success depends on a collective capability to maintain trust across the region and across our constituencies. The BAHEP legacy, built over 40 years and presented by Bob Scott, Joe Barlow, and Sandy Johnson, is one of regional leadership and economic development. We're all here this evening because of trusted relationships that have resulted in economic successes and improved quality of life. However, the work is never done. Over the course of the past 8 years, we have convened hundreds of meetings with our industry leaders, our community leaders, our local and state and federal officials to identify and define important issues and then act. We work to earn your trust each and every day. Some of our work make headlines, like new business opportunities or trips to Washington, D.C. to support the human space exploration, to Austin in support of education and regional business interests, or the Netherlands in support of storm surge suppression. However, the majority of our work is unseen, but nevertheless vital to our businesses and industries and our exceptional quality of life. Tonight, we are here to celebrate. We should all feel proud about all we've accomplished over the last 40 years, and trust that BAHEP will be with you every step of the way to achieve even greater heights. So here's to the next 40 years, and thank you for all you do. I a few other comments that are not on the agenda. So before we go, I want to recognize a very special individual this evening. We've given out 2 chairman awards in the past 40 years. One to Dr. Ned Dudney and one to Franz Gillibard. We've given out 1 presidential award to a very surprised Mary Alice Cherry, who's with us tonight. This evening, we're going to give out our 2nd presidential award. As I read the award, you will clearly understand why this person is so deserving. See how well I can read here. The Presidential Award of the Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership has historically been presented to a select few individuals who exemplify incomparable leadership and a heartfelt commitment to the businesses, institutions, and people of the Bay Area Houston region. With a bachelor's degree from Wake Forest University and a master's and doctoral degree from the University of North Carolina, he has made significant contributions to education throughout his career. He's a former tenured professor at the University of Houston Clear Lake and served on the Board of Trustees of the Clear Creek Independent School District. His expertise has provided invaluable focus and direction for numerous organizations within the region, including the Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership. It is with sincere gratitude for the friendship and support that he has given to this organization for more than 25 years. And the Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership presents this presidential award to Dr. Glenn Friedman. To read. For the ones of you that know Glenn as well as all of us, or most of us do, this is so true. His unique guidance with respect to the Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership's initiatives has contributed greatly to its success. This rare insight is exceeded only by his consummate sense of humor, which in itself is worthy of recognition. Glenn Friedman.
Behind the lectern.
Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Make it short, Glenn.
I'm the guy who designed the program to last until 6:30. My comment is very simply, thank you. It's a pleasure working with all of you. I look forward to the next 40 years of BAHEP and outstanding activity in this region. Thank you all.
Well, in conclusion, we've been looking back for 40 years, and now we look ahead to the next 40 years. With BAHEP's reputation for leadership, collaboration, credibility, and trust, I'm positive that BAHEP will continue to enhance the economic vitality of our region as well as the quality of life. People will be needed to follow in the footsteps of Bob Scott, Joe Barlow, Sandy Johnson, Bob Mitchell, and others who have led BAHEP in one form or another over the past 40 years. In the very last part, we have 2 thank yous, and these thank yous aren't adequate, but they are thank yous. The first thank you goes to those people who served on the 40th anniversary committee, which was so ably chaired by Dr. Glenn Friedman. And so to that group, which really did the heavy lifting, let's give the 40th anniversary committee a round of applause. The second group that deserves our thanks, because it's very easy to take these folks for granted, are Bob Mitchell as president and the entire staff of BAHEP that day in and day out makes BAHEP the leading organization that it is. So to Bob and the staff, please join me in thanking them. Out in the foyer of this room, we want you to pick up, there's a couple of special items, a special commemorative program of this night's event, as well as a specially made medallion. and we encourage you to pick up both of those before you leave tonight. We hope you enjoy the rest of the reception.